In this video, you will learn how to subtract integers on a number line with counters and by adding the opposite. Remember that integers are the set of all whole numbers and their opposites, as well as 0. Example 1 is a fairly simple problem. 5 minus 2. I know, you know the answer, but let's look at what it looks like on a number line. We'll start at 0, just like we did when we added. Then we move 5 to the right to get to positive 5. Then to represent the subtracting of 2, we are going to move to the left 2 spaces. So that brings us to 3. So 5 minus 2 is 3. Example 2 is 2 minus 5. You might have been told in the past that you can't subtract a 5 from a 2 because the 5 is too big and there aren't any left. But we can. Just like we've done before, we start at 0. Then to represent the 2, we move 2 spaces to the right. Next, to subtract 5, we start at that 2 and move 5 spaces to the left. That takes us to negative 3. So 2 minus 5 is negative 3. Example 3 is 3 minus negative 2. So this one's going to challenge your brain a little bit. Stick with it, you'll get it. We start just like we have in all the other problems. We go from 0 to positive 3. Now when we subtract negative 2, that's when it's going to get a little bit tricky. We know that subtraction is moving to the left on the number line, but because it's subtracting negative 2, that negative switches us around the other direction. So we're moving to the left, but we're doing it backwards. So we're actually moving to the right 2 spaces. So that puts us at positive 5. So 3 minus negative 2 is actually positive 5. Let's look at example 4, negative 5 minus negative 4. It's similar to the last problem because we are subtracting a negative integer. We'll start at 0 on the number line and move to negative 5 by going 5 places to the left. Then when we subtract that negative 4, remember subtraction is like going to the left on the number line, but because we're subtracting a negative, that turns us around the other direction. So we're actually going to the right 4 spaces. So that puts us at negative 1. 5 minus negative 4 is negative 1. Now we'll start looking at how to subtract with counters. Example 5 is 7 minus 3. The 7 is positive, so we will start with 7 yellow counters. Then to subtract 3, we remove 3 yellow counters. The 3 is a positive number that's being subtracted from the 7. Example 6, 3 minus 7. How are we going to do that with counters? We can start with 3 yellow counters, but we can't remove 7 yellow counters because we only have 3. So let's add more counters without changing the value of 3. We learned in the adding video that a yellow counter and a red counter add up to 0 because positive 1 plus negative 1 equals 0. So if we add 0 to 3, it still equals 3. We want to make sure we add enough 0 pairs that it will give us 7 yellow counters to be able to remove. So here we added 4 0 pairs. Now we can remove 7 yellow counters. That leaves us with 4 red counters. That means negative 4. So we now know that 3 minus 7 is negative 4. Example number 7, 3 minus negative 7. Let's start with our 3 yellow counters to represent positive 3. Subtracting negative 7 means we need to be able to take away 7 red counters, but we don't have any red counters. So we need to figure out how we can add 7 red counters before we can take them away. So to add 7 red counters, that would change the value of that 3. So we have to add 0 pairs. So we add 7 red counters and 7 yellow counters, which is 7 0 pairs. We still have a value of 3, but now we have 7 red counters that we can remove. Now that we removed the 7 red counters, there are 10 yellow counters left. So the answer to 3 minus negative 7 is positive 10. Now that we've looked at how to subtract using a number line and counters, let's look at what rule we can discover from how this works. Here's our rule. Don't subtract. Instead, add the opposite. Let's look at what I mean by that. Let's take a look at example number 8, 3 minus negative 7. I know, we've done this problem already, but there's an easier way than using a number line and counters all the time. Instead of trying to figure out which way do I go on the number line, how many counters do I add, do I subtract, how many 0 pairs? That can get confusing. So instead, we're going to use the add the opposite rule. So we had 3 minus negative 7, but we're going to change the minus to plus, and we're going to change the negative 7 to positive 7. That's its opposite. That leaves us with a much simpler problem. 3 plus 7. It's 10. Example number 9, 10 minus 15. Remember our rule, add the opposite. So we had a minus, now we have an add. We had positive 15, now we have negative 15. Now we need to think of it as an addition problem. We remember how to add two numbers with different signs, right? I know, we subtract. So we are actually going to subtract 15 minus 10, and we get 5. Then we use the sign of the bigger number, remember, the one with the bigger absolute value. So in this case, the 15 is bigger with a bigger absolute value. So the negative is going to go to our answer. So the answer is negative 5. This same rule works for subtracting fractions and decimals. Now you should know how to subtract integers. Thanks for watching.